I didn't hate my life. That's what made it confusing. Nothing was actively wrong. No disasters, no obvious failures, just a quiet sense that I was standing slightly to the side of everything that mattered. I noticed it one morning in the mirror. Not because I looked bad, because I looked finished, like someone who'd already made all the important decisions without remembering when that happened. I was 39, which isn't old, but it's old enough to realize time doesn't explain itself anymore. You either know what you're doing, or you're just repeating something that once worked. My apartment was clean, too clean. Furniture chosen for efficiency, not comfort. Nothing on the walls that could start a conversation. When people visited, which wasn't often, they said the same thing. Nice place. They never said warm. Work was fine. That word again. I was respected, paid well, trusted with responsibility. People asked for my opinion, but no one ever asked how I was, and I'd trained them not to. There was a woman I used to see, not a relationship. We never called it that. She stayed over sometimes, left early. We liked each other enough not to lie, and not enough to stay. Eventually, she stopped answering. I didn't chase. That's what I told myself was maturity. The real reason? I didn't want to find out what she'd ask for next. The moment everything shifted happened on a Thursday. Again, nothing dramatic, just a calendar notification. Dad, surgery follow-up. I stared at it longer than I should have. My father and I spoke rarely, not because of anger, because silence had become our shared language. I went anyway. Hospital rooms have a way of making things honest. You can't pretend to be busy when there's nowhere to go. He looked smaller. That unsettled me. Men like him aren't supposed to shrink. They're supposed to stay solid so you don't have to think about what comes next. You came, he said, not surprised, just noting the fact. I said I would. He nodded. That was enough for both of us. We sat there, surrounded by machines doing quiet work. He stared at the wall. I stared at the floor. Years of things unsaid between us, comfortable and heavy at the same time. You ever think about slowing down? He asked suddenly. I looked up. From what? He shrugged. Running. I almost laughed. Almost. That night, driving home, his question stayed with me. Because I realized something uncomfortable. I wasn't running toward anything. I was just moving fast enough not to notice where I was standing. I stopped at a red light. City quiet for once. And the thought landed without warning. If this is my life in 10 years, would I be okay with it? I didn't answer. I didn't know how. Back home, I poured a drink I didn't really want, sat on the couch I barely used, and for the first time in a long while, I let myself stay still. No phone, no noise, just the weight of the question. I realized something then. I hadn't chosen this life. I drifted into it by choosing what felt easiest every time something mattered. My phone buzzed. A name I didn't expect. Emily. I hadn't seen her in almost 5 years. We'd ended badly, not with anger, but with avoidance, which somehow lasts longer. Her message was short. I don't know why I thought of you today, but I did. I stared at it. Heart steady, mind loud. This wasn't nostalgia. It wasn't hope. It was something else. A reminder that unfinished things don't disappear. They wait. I didn't reply right away. I stood by the window watching the city move without me, and I understood something important. I was standing at the edge of a decision I'd been avoiding my entire adult life. Not about her, about whether I was finally ready to live, or just continue existing comfortably. Not because I didn't want to, because I wanted to do it right, and for once, right didn't mean fast. The next morning, I reread her message. It still didn't ask for anything. That was the dangerous part. I replied with one sentence. I was wondering how you were. No nostalgia. No invitation. She answered an hour later. Still figuring things out. That felt familiar. We met 3 days later. Coffee shop. Neutral territory. She was already there when I arrived. She always used to be. Time had changed her, but not in the ways I expected. She looked calmer, more anchored, less willing to perform. I realized something uncomfortable. She'd grown. while I'd perfected staying the same. We talked about surface things first: work, the city, mutual friends we no longer saw, no tension, which somehow made everything heavier. "I almost didn't message you," she said finally. "Why did you?" She looked at her cup. "Because I realized I never told you why I left. I didn't interrupt. I was done interrupting people. I felt like I was waiting for permission to matter," she continued. "Not accusing, just honest. And I promised myself I wouldn't do that again." I nodded. That sounded like something I'd been afraid to hear. "I wasn't good at being needed," I admitted. She smiled faintly. "No, you were good at being reliable, just not present." That landed, because it was true. We walked outside. Cold air, traffic noise. The city didn't care that something important was happening. I liked that. "I don't want to rewind," she said. "I'm not asking you to." "Good," she replied, "because I'm not the same person anymore." Neither was I. At least, I hoped not. Later that night, my father called, which almost never happened. "I've been thinking," he said. That sentence alone made me sit down. "You don't have to come by anymore. I'll manage." I waited. "And?" I asked. "And I didn't mean that the way it sounded," he added quietly. I closed my eyes. "I don't know how to ask for help," he said. "Not as a confession, as a fact." Neither did I. After we hung up, I stayed in the kitchen longer than necessary. I realized something then. My life was built on not asking and not being asked, and it was empty because of it. Emily texted later. "I'm glad we talked." So was I, but not because it felt good, because it felt honest. That night, I didn't pour a drink. I sat on the couch again. Same silence, different weight. I understood something that scared me. I was no longer afraid of losing what I had. I was afraid of never choosing something real. The next morning, I asked my boss for time off. No explanation, just honesty. "I need to think," he nodded. "About what?" "My life," I said. I walked out of the building lighter than expected, not because things were solved, because I'd stopped pretending they were. I stood outside, phone in my hand again. Not Emily's number this time, my father's. I pressed call, and as it rang, I realized something simple and unsettling. This wasn't about fixing relationships. It was about learning how to show up before everything disappeared quiet. The phone rang longer, and for a moment I thought I'd waited too long. Then I heard his voice. "Yeah." No greeting, no hesitation, just presence. "I'm coming by this weekend," I said. He paused. "You don't have to." "I know," I replied. "I want to." Another pause. "Okay," he said. That was all. We didn't talk much when I arrived. We didn't need to. I fixed a few things around the house. He watched. Occasionally offered advice I didn't ask for. It felt normal, which surprised me. At one point he said, "You always looked busy when you were younger." I shrugged. I was. Or pretending to be, he added. He wasn't wrong. That night, I slept on the couch. The house made noise. Old houses always do. It reminded me that staying means listening to things you can't control. The next morning, we ate breakfast together. Quiet. Comfortable. He looked at me and said something I'd never heard before. "I'm glad you're here." It landed harder than any apology ever could. When I got back to the city, Emily was waiting. Not physically, emotionally. She didn't ask where I'd been. She asked, "How was it?" And that told me everything about how much she'd changed. "I showed up," I said. She smiled. "That's new." We didn't make plans. We didn't define anything. We just kept choosing the next honest step. Dinner without phones, walks without urgency, conversations that didn't end when they got uncomfortable. One night, she asked me, "Are you afraid you'll disappear again?" I thought about it. "I'm afraid I will," I said. She nodded. "Me too." That was enough truth for both of us. I didn't quit my job. I didn't move cities. I didn't reinvent myself. I just stopped avoiding. And that changed everything. Months passed. Nothing spectacular happened, which I learned is what real life looks like when you're actually in it. One evening, sitting next to her, I realized something quietly profound. I wasn't trying to escape anymore. Not from work, not from family, not from myself. I used to think a good life was one where nothing went wrong. Now I know it's one where you stay even when it does. I didn't suddenly become brave. I just became present. And that turned out to be enough.